5 years ago, I was sitting in a sterile, beige academic advisor's office. You know the kind. The air, thick with the smell of old paper and quiet disappointment. The official term for my situation was academic suspension. The unofficial term, the one I heard in the dead silence from my parents on the car ride home, was failure. Everyone I knew wrote me off. My family, who had sacrificed so much for my education, my friends, who were all powering ahead on their own college journeys. They had their stories straight. I was the smart kid who got lazy, the one with all this potential who just squandered it. They were already talking about my next steps in hushed, concerned tones, as if my life was some problem they needed to solve. They expected me to argue, make excuses, and promise I'd do better. They expected me to explain myself. I chose to do something else instead. I went completely silent. For 5 years, I didn't justify my past or forecast my future. I just disappeared. And last month, I sold the tech company I built from my basement for a number that made my hands shake when I saw it on the contract. My success wasn't a comeback, it was a reality they never saw coming because I never gave them a chance to doubt it in the first place. This is how I did it. Flunking out of college wasn't a sudden explosion, it was a slow, quiet implosion. It started small, sleeping through a few alarms, which then turned into skipping morning classes altogether. My room, once just a place to sleep, became my fortress against the world. I used to be a huge extrovert. My room was always the hangout spot, but that energy just faded. Soon, the only company I kept was the glow of a video game marathon bleeding into 3 a.m. I stopped answering texts from friends asking where I was. I felt this crushing pressure to succeed, especially from my high achieving parents who just wanted the best for me, but I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do with my life. The stress felt like a physical weight, and I had no one to really talk to about it. Every failed exam and every missed assignment was just another brick in the wall I was building around myself. I started avoiding eye contact with cashiers, with people on the street, terrified they could somehow see the failure radiating off me. It felt like I was wearing a giant neon sign that said, "Not good enough." My GPA plummeted from a respectable 3.2 to a catastrophic 1.25. Then the official letter arrived: academic suspension. Two words that felt like a life sentence. The phone call to my parents was the hardest thing I've ever done. Honestly, it was worse than the letter. The silence on the other end of the line is so much heavier than any yelling. When I got home, the disappointment was a physical thing in our house. My dad, a man who believes in hard work above all else, could barely look at me. My mom would try to be gentle, asking about my plan, but her eyes were filled with this sorrow that felt a lot like pity. Family gatherings turned into a masterclass in passive aggression. Aunts and uncles would say things like, "Well, not everyone is cut out for university," or tell stories about some distant cousin who finally got his act together and was now managing a fast food joint. They weren't trying to be mean. They were just fitting me into the only box they had for someone like me, the cautionary tale. My friends, busy with their own lives, would offer these flimsy words of encouragement that sounded more like condolences. "You'll figure it out," they'd say, before quickly changing the subject to their upcoming exams or summer internships. I was 20 years old, and my life story had already been written for me by everyone else. I was the dropout, the disappointment, the one who couldn't handle it. Every conversation felt like an interrogation, every piece of advice a judgment. They wanted an explanation, a 5-point plan for my redemption. They wanted me to repent, really, just to soothe their own discomfort with my failure. I could see the path they were laying out for me: a local community college to prove myself, a part time job, and a slow, supervised crawl back to respectability. But something inside me just snapped. The breaking point wasn't some big, dramatic confrontation. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon, about a month after I'd moved back home. I was in the kitchen, and my dad was on the phone with his brother. He didn't know I was there. I heard my name, and I froze. He was talking about me, his voice a mix of frustration and embarrassment. "I don't know what to do with him," he said. "He just sits in his room. No ambition. We give him everything, and he just throws it away." He wasn't angry. He was just defeated. It was the finality in his voice that gut punched me. He had already accepted their version of the story. To him, I was a failed investment. In that moment, a strange sort of clarity washed over me. I realized that trying to explain myself was pointless. Arguing would just look defensive. Promises would sound empty. My words were worthless. Trying to prove someone wrong when they're determined to be right is a complete waste of energy. The only thing I had left was my actions. I walked back to my room and closed the door. I didn't slam it, I closed it quietly, deliberately. That was the moment I took a vow of silence. Not a literal one, of course, but a strategic one. No more explanations, no more justifications, no more fighting their story. From that day on, I decided my energy would not be spent convincing others of my worth. It would be spent building it. I decided to let them have their narrative. They could think I was lazy, lost, and unmotivated. They could whisper at family dinners and shake their heads because while they were busy talking about my past, I would be busy building my future. The desire to prove your haters wrong can be a hell of a motivator, especially at the start. I wasn't doing it for them, but their doubt was the flint that sparked my fire. I would let my success be the only explanation I ever gave. The silence became my shield and my sword. It protected me from the negativity and let me focus every ounce of my being on the work ahead. It was an act of rebellion, not resignation. The beginning of the silent grind was anything but glamorous. My first move, I sold my gaming console. It felt like severing a limb, but I knew it was a gateway back to the person I was trying to leave behind. With the few $100 I made, I didn't buy a stack of self-help books. I bought a cheap, used laptop and paid for a high-speed internet connection. My bedroom became my office, my lab, and my monastery. My first efforts were a clumsy dance of trial and error. I was fascinated by how websites were built, so I decided to learn how to code. For weeks, I did nothing but watch free tutorials, my screen filled with lines of HTML and CSS that looked like a foreign language. My first project was a truly horrendous neon green website for a fake pizza place. It was a failure, but it was a functional failure. It taught me what not to do. This became my new mantra. Failure isn't a verdict, it's just data. I was reframing my setbacks not as proof of my worthlessness, but as simple course corrections. Days bled into nights. My family just saw a closed door. They probably imagined I was in there sleeping, wasting away. In reality, I was working with a focus I'd never felt before. I devoured everything I could about digital marketing, SEO, and e commerce. I started a blog, not about my feelings, but a super niche blog reviewing obscure board games. It got maybe 10 visitors a day for the first 6 months, and 8 of them were probably bots. But it was my testing ground. I learned how to write for an audience, how to use keywords, how to build a tiny microscopic community. The first real win came after just about 8 months. I made my first dollar online from an affiliate link on my blog. $1. It might as well have been a million. I printed out the payment notification and taped it to the wall above my desk. It was tangible proof, a secret victory only I knew about. This became a ritual. I started celebrating every small win. My first 100 email subscribers, My first freelance client paying me $50 for a product description. Each one was another brick in the foundation of my new life. The silence was a double edged sword, though. It gave me focus, but it also bred this intense loneliness. There were days the doubt was crushing. I'd overhear my parents talking about my cousin who just got into law school, and the weight of their unspoken comparison felt unbearable. In those moments, I'd look at my wall, now dotted with a dozen little printouts, my evidence log of small wins. It was a visual reminder that I was making progress, even if no one else saw it. I was slowly learning to find validation from within, detaching my self worth from what other people thought. My skills started to compound. The coding helped me build better websites. The marketing helped me grow my blog. The writing practice helped me land better freelance gigs. After a year of freelancing, I'd saved up a few $1,000s. I used it to build a simple software tool that solved a problem I had as a blogger, managing affiliate links efficiently. I launched it with zero fanfare. I just sent an email to my tiny blog list and posted about it in a few online forums. The first day, I made 2 sales, total revenue, $98. I almost cried. It wasn't about the money. It was the fact that I had created something from nothing and someone else found it valuable enough to pay for. Over the next 2 years, I poured everything into that software. Every dollar went back into the business, hiring a freelance developer to add features, running small targeted ads. My life was a monotonous loop. Wake up, code, answer customer emails, eat, the sleep, repeat. I lost track of weekends. I missed birthdays. From the outside, I was still the son who lived in the basement. I never explained the project to anyone. When they asked what I was up to, I'd just say, working on some computer stuff. Their eyes would glaze over. It was the perfect cover. The business grew slowly, and then all at once, a major industry blog featured my software. My daily sales doubled, then tripled. I had to hire my first full-time employee, then a part-time marketer. I wasn't just a guy in a basement anymore. I was the CEO of a small, profitable company, and still, nobody in my personal life had a clue. The reveal wasn't one single dramatic moment. It was a series of quiet, seismic shocks that shattered the story my family had built around me. The first tremor happened on a random Saturday. I had just bought a new car, not a flashy sports car, just a safe, reliable sedan, the kind a responsible adult buys. I parked it in the driveway, and my dad came out looking confused. "Whose car is this?" he asked. "It's mine," I said, tossing him the keys. He caught them, his eyes wide. He looked from the brand new car to me, the son he thought was unemployed and living off his good graces. The question hung in the air, but for the first time, he didn't ask it. He just slowly walked around the car, running his hand over the hood, with a look of profound confusion on his face. He didn't get it, but he couldn't deny the evidence right in front of him. The second shock was bigger. My parents' 30th wedding anniversary was coming up. They had always dreamed of a trip to Italy, but life and money always got in the way. 2 weeks before their anniversary, I sat them down at the kitchen table. I placed 2 first-class plane tickets and a folder detailing a fully paid 3-week tour of Italy in front of them. My mom just stared at the tickets, then at me, her eyes filling with tears. "How?" she started, her voice trembling. My dad picked up the itinerary, his hands shaking slightly as he read the hotel confirmations. He looked up at me, his face a wild mix of shock, pride, and dawning comprehension. This computer stuff you've been doing?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. I just nodded. I didn't give them a speech. I didn't show them revenue charts or talk about the 18-hour days. I didn't have to. The tickets in their hands spoke louder than my words ever could. For the first time in 5 years, the look in their eyes wasn't disappointment or concern. It was awe. The final public reveal happened about 6 months later. My company got an acquisition offer from a larger tech firm. After weeks of negotiation, we settled on a price. The deal was announced in a press release that got picked up by several major tech publications. My name, the name they all associated with failure and no ambition, was right there in the headline. A friend from college sent me a screenshot of an article with a simple message: "Is this you?" My phone exploded with messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years: aunts, uncles, old family friends. The tone was no longer pitying. It was congratulatory, amazed, and a little bewildered. They were finally seeing the result without ever witnessing the process. Their story about me was broken, and they had nothing to replace it with except the undeniable truth. In the aftermath, something funny happened. The validation I thought I craved, that big "I told you so" moment, didn't feel as satisfying as I'd imagined. In fact, it barely registered. Why? Because over the past 5 years of silent work, I had fundamentally rewired my own brain. I had stopped looking for external validation and had learned how to generate my own. My self worth wasn't tied to their approval anymore. It was tied to my own effort, my progress, my integrity, my relationship with my family. Transformed, our conversations were no longer filled with that subtext of disappointment. Now they were filled with genuine curiosity. They started asking me questions, and not to check up on me, but because they respected me and wanted to understand my world. We never had a big, dramatic, "let's talk about the past" conversation. We didn't need to. The present had made it irrelevant. My success wasn't a weapon I held over them. It was a bridge that let us find a new, more honest way to connect with each other. Proving them wrong was never the real goal. Proving myself right was. The silence wasn't about punishing them, it was about protecting me. It created a sacred space where I could fail, learn, and grow without the corrosive influence of their doubt. It allowed me to build a life on my own terms. The most powerful thing you can do when someone writes you off is to believe your own story more than you believe theirs, and then go out and build it. If you've ever felt underestimated or have a story about proving the doubters wrong, I would be genuinely honored to read it in the comments below. Looking back, getting kicked out of college was the best thing that ever happened to me. It was a painful, humiliating, and absolutely necessary catalyst. It forced me to abandon the path that was laid out for me and to carve out my own. It taught me that the world's definition of failure is just an opinion, not a life sentence. Setbacks aren't stop signs, they are guideposts pointing you in a new direction. The greatest freedom I ever found was in letting go of the need to explain myself. Your energy is finite. Every minute you spend defending yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you is a minute you aren't spending on building your dream. So let them talk, let them doubt, let them have their stories. You only need to worry about one story, the one you are writing for yourself day by day, action by action, in the quiet, focused, and powerful theater of your own life. Trust your journey, because in the end, the only validation that truly matters is the kind that comes from within.